Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. We got a lot of stuff to cover in this show. I'm left a little speechless after watching the full video of a speech from Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, from just 2 years ago. The video has emerged, and wow, a lot going on here. A lot going on. We're going to review it. In this speech, Pope Leo XIV, just 2 years ago, in receiving an honorary doctorate, gives a speech that I'll have translated for you, and we're going to watch the whole thing. I'll start out with a clip, and then we'll dive deep into it. It's only 13 minutes long. A lot going on here. He basically says, he calls out bishops and social media personalities in the Catholic Church who accuse Pope Francis of error, of teaching error, who were critical of Pope Francis. He's basically saying these people are wrong, and was calling them out. So again, bishops, and that's going to be also social media personalities like YouTubers, people are, well known online, and Twitter and other platforms like that. He's calling all of them out. So there's that going on. Simultaneous to the broader part of the speech, where he's endorsing Cardinal Bernardin's seamless garment view. So he's endorsing Bernardin and Cardinal Cupich, Blaise Cupich from Chicago, and a call to revive Bernardin's seamless garment view, which is often associated with a very progressive view of the church's social doctrine. And there are some very serious allegations that have been made about Bernardin that we're going to explore briefly today. So this is going to be very controversial. Some progressives will watch this and they're going to love some parts. Some traditionalists will watch this and be incredibly concerned. And I'm going to try to give you background as to why different groups in the Catholic Church will perceive this video a little differently. So I'm going to try to explain kind of the background behind some of these figures and views and all of that. Let me first just start with a clip of where in the speech he's calling out bishops, dissenting bishops who accuse Pope Francis of teaching error, and he's calling out social media personalities, Catholic voices, who accuse the Pope of error and also were very critical of the Pope. I think we know who all he's talking about as far as bishops and online personalities. It should be very obvious who he's talking about. But let me play a clip of that first before we take a look at the whole thing, where he's talking about Bernardin and the seamless garment view, what that is and what implications that might have for today. Okay, so let me go ahead and share the screen. Let's dive in. All right. Please let me know if you'll have any difficulties hearing the audio. There's divisions between Christians. There's people, for example, in the church that harshly criticize the Holy Father, or some bishops, or certain situations, people that reject their teachings, who seek to divide. Only by looking at blogs, at interviews in the past months, before, during, and at the end of the Synod on Synodality month, fake news, distortions have been published. Even theories, conspiracies, wrong interpretations about so many beautiful experiences we had during the Synod. Okay, where do we begin with this? Well, I have a long history of speaking about what he just touched on, as I'll show you in just a moment. For years, I pointed out, and notice the context. He's also talking about not just Pope Francis and his teachings, but also people who are criticizing the Synod on Synodality. and disseminating fake news about it and making accusations about Pope Francis's synodality. Sharon is Leo splaining, saying this isn't from Pope Leo, it's from Cardinal Prevost. Do you think they're two different persons? Anyways, as I said, this was a speech from 2 years ago, but seeing how people digest information is absolutely fascinating. Putting that to the side, notice what he's talking about here with the Synod, right? He's saying that he was part of the Synod. It was a great experience, it was a wonderful thing, and he's calling out people who were disseminating fake news about it and being critical about it. We know who those people are. He's calling out bishops and online personalities. So that's going to be Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Zinn, Bishop Schneider, Bishop Strickland. He's very clearly calling them out, among others. As far as online personalities, that's going to be obviously your Taylor Marshalls of the world, right? He's calling out this group of people. And this is something that I have spoken about for years. In many ways, watching this video, I feel vindicated on that point, that he's very clearly aware of that situation because he speaks in English. And so he was able to kind of track the situation in the media. So I think that because he is aware of a lot of the discussions that took place in the English language, he was able to offer this criticism. Whereas I think Pope Francis was a little bit more distant from it. So this is just incredibly fascinating. I'll show you just a quick history. And by the way, again, this is from 2023, as the university that granted him the award said, from 2023. This is when he gave the speech. So just 2 years ago. Again, I see some people are going to say, well, he might be a different person now as Pope. Maybe, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. In fact, everything that we've seen from him so far is confirming what we're seeing in this video. But okay, people have to try to explain the cognitive dissonance in one way or another, and they're welcome to do that. All right. Now, I have, again, a long history of saying exactly what Leo was saying 2 years ago in this speech. Here's one video, The Authority of Synods and Dissenting from Popes, with Dave Gordon, the brother of Timothy Gordon. I did an interview with him. I was talking about this situation. Dave Gordon worked with Church Militant for a while. He's an attorney. And I did a show with him talking about this question. And I was pointing out exactly what Prevost was saying, which is there are online critics, bishops, and media personalities who are falsely accusing the Pope and accusing the Synod of Bishops of things that just aren't true, that is fake news. And so you can see that in that video. You can see the same thing in this video. Pope Francis calms the Synod fear storm, because there was a huge fear storm. People were saying the doctrine on X, Y, and Z is going to change, while others peddle fear and falsehoods. I go into details on that there. Another one for you. Did the new Synod on Synodality document change? And I dispel some of the fake news about the Synod's documents. Here's another one. Is the Synod of Bishops going to change the faith? Again, I address the fear storm that people were peddling. Did the Synod change the faith? And here I review a cardinal who is telling people, no, the Synod didn't change the faith. And he was a Synod participant. Here I review the papal posse from EWTN. I say the papal posse plummets into paranoia over the Synod. So Father Gerald Murray, Raymond Arroyo on the papal posse were peddling all sorts of accusations and fear. Prevost was calling out these people, these online media personality and bishops. Here's another one. Can the Synod on Synodality reinvent the Catholic faith? I was talking about it there as well. Another one, Bishop Strickland comments on the Synod on Synodality. So again, this is another one of those bishops that he's calling out here in the speech. Another one, Pope Francis responds to Cardinal Burke's view on the Synod. Cardinal Burke was another one of those, promoting these views about the Synod that Prevost was calling out. Another one, Bishop Strickland's pastoral letter on the Synod. I can go on. This is not an exhaustive catalog. The Tsar says, Michael with the I told you so receipts. Well, and this is not an exhaustive catalog, like I said. I mean, this is just a few that I grabbed from that time period. I have more before then and more after then, talking about this, addressing the situation of fake news, showing people the primary sources, showing them you guys are being lied to. You're being peddled fear. You're being told false accusations, and showing that to people. And I labored to do that for years, and I was slandered, mocked, and ridiculed for it. So it's comforting seeing the future Pope Leo at the time say this. It's interesting to see that, because it feels like kind of a vindication moment. And so if you've been watching this channel consistently, what Prevost says there 2 years ago shouldn't come as a surprise. You should probably just be nodding your head thinking, yeah, that's true. Now, there's more to the speech than just that. He's not just calling out dissenting bishops and dissenting YouTubers. Oddly enough, ironically, some of those YouTubers and bishops are now Pope Leo fans. And this is going to put them in a great difficulty. Perhaps they'll be silent about it and just ignore this. But this puts them in a massive bind, because on the one hand, they love Pope Leo and they see him as a traditionalist. I'm about to show you a video that might dispel that narrative, but they see him as a traditionalist. And they're largely in favor of him. They're looking at him with the most charitable interpretations. They're seeing him as, really, really great Pope. But here he is just in 2023, just 2 years ago, calling them out. Calling out these very media personalities and bishops who are right now favorable to Pope Leo. It's got to be awkward for them if they're aware. In reality, they probably will not tell you about this video. They're just going to keep this one quiet. They'll just keep it, hush, hush. They're not going to show this to their audience because it's going to be awkward for them, because here they are promoting him while he's calling them out just 2 years ago. And they're going to have to argue, well, the Prevost from 2 years ago is different than the Pope Leo of today. And they're going to have to argue that despite the evidence to the contrary. They're going to have to take that kind of extreme view that perhaps now that he's received the grace of the papacy, he's just like completely changed his views, despite his addresses and homilies so far that indicate he hasn't. By the way, there is a new papal address that just came out yesterday that, again, these same people didn't tell you about. I'm going to tell you about it in a show at 3 p.m. today. It is on the question of ecumenism and interreligious dialogue from Pope Leo XIV. He gave this yesterday. And he says some interesting things about Jews and Muslims that, again, most people aren't reporting to you. We're going to cover that in detail. I already have a link up for it. So just go ahead and look at the link under my live feeds. You should see it. Hit the bell for notification just so you know when I go live later on today at 3 p.m. We're going to cover that because, again, that one's slipping under the radar. People are just kind of pretend that this isn't being said, but I'm showing this to y'all to show this is consistent with what I've been telling y'all was going to happen with the next pontificate. But again, the media personalities and the bishops that he's calling out in this video, so far, they're not calling people's attention to this because it would be very awkward for them to do that. They would have to have a major mea culpa moment, a very profound change of heart. They would have to say, well, I guess I didn't give Pope Francis a fair shake. I guess I didn't give the Synod a fair shake. I need to change. And I would respect that if they did that, right? I did that. I used to be very critical of Pope Francis and all of this stuff. But I came to realize I had been sold some fake news, and I had a misunderstanding on a number of issues. I came right here on this channel and told y'all why I've had a change of heart. I've corrected the misinformation that I previously provided that I wasn't aware was misinformation. I corrected and explained to people why I changed my perspective. But what's curious is the people who have now all of a sudden flipped under this current pontificate, they haven't explained why they've changed. And they haven't applied everything that they're saying today about Pope Leo to the pontificate of Pope Francis. In fact, some of them have deleted their previous videos. As soon as Pope Leo was elected, they were critical of him, saying he covered up sex abuse. All of a sudden, just like that, in one day, those videos disappeared. They have been taken down. They're made private, so you can't watch them. Now, I could show them to you. I have a copy of them because I knew they would do it. But the point is, they've tried to make it disappear like that without an explanation. And see, I don't respect that. I don't respect that, because when I had a change of heart, I was very upfront with people and I explained that to people. But if these other people had a change of heart, then they need to explain why, and they need to then correct the misinformation that they previously disseminated. But I wonder if they end up seeing this video from 2 years ago. I wonder how they'll feel. Seeing a man that they seemingly admire calling them out. Now, putting that to the side, there is a part 2 to this speech that we need to review and have an honest conversation about. And that is the progressive tone of what he is promoting when it comes to the church's social doctrine and putting it into perspective as he's endorsing the controversial Bernardin's seamless garment view, as well as Cupich's promotion of the seamless garment view. This is also something they're not showing you. They're not telling you about. Wait, there's this video from him just 2 years ago saying this. Has he changed his perspective? No, it doesn't look like he's changed his perspective. Everything he said so far as Pope is consistent with what he has said previously 2 years ago. So for the people with the kind of the split personality theory here of Leo XIV, or a profound conversion, a Saul to Paul of Tarsus conversion moment, that theory just doesn't hold water. So I'm going to go ahead and break the cognitive dissonance here, and I'm going to show you something that people are not showing you, and we're going to have that conversation. So be prepared again if you kind of are coming into this with rose-colored glasses. Be prepared to encounter some serious cognitive dissonance with what I'm about to show you. By the way, I did have to just show, at least I have to give it to Brie Dale. I do have to give it to her. She was, of course, very critical of Pope Francis, but I do have to give it to her that at least yesterday she did post that clip that I just showed you. She didn't, to my knowledge, post the whole thing, which I'm about to review for you. But she did post that clip, and she says in 2023, Pope Leo XIV, then Cardinal Prevost, spoke at the University of Catholic St. Toribio. Okay. In his speech, he condemns certain blogs and journalists, by the way, also bishops, that pushed fake news, distortions, theories, and conspiracies against the Pope and bishops. And she asks for people's thoughts. Now, I think it would be interesting for Brie to offer her own thoughts, given that he's talking about her and others. So I would like to get their thoughts for those who were critical of Pope Francis in the previous pontificate. Now, I was also critical, but I guess in a constructive, attempted to be constructive in the criticism. I'm talking about those who were overly critical in a destructive way, a dissenting way, disseminating fake news, false information, dissent against the magisterium. My question would be, when you watch the future Pope Leo say this to you 2 years ago, how do you feel? What are your thoughts? What do you think about this? I do want to hear. Okay. And Mahova says, Brie is not that bad. She's way better than others. She is way better than others. I agree with you on that. But it would be interesting to get her thoughts as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. And let's watch the full speech. The first 3 minutes is introduction and all that. So skipping over that. Now it's in another language, but I do have, as you can see, pulled up on the screen, I do have closed captions. And I have them automatically translating the speech. So you'll need to kind of watch it But at the same time, I know some people are watching via audio only, so bear with me. I will pause it every few seconds to read the closed captions on the screen for all of those who can't read, or they can't read it because it's too small on their phone, or for those who are just listening via audio only. So bear with me as we do that, because this is a really important speech that we really have to have an honest conversation about. Okay, so let's begin.
Que lleva en su nombre la palabra católica.
Okay.
Y que quiere vivir de verdad la misión de formar a los estudiantes desde una perspectiva que refleja.
I'm about to start translating. We're getting through the introduction.
En modo transversal los principios del evangelio, como también las enseñanzas de la iglesia.
All right, here we go.
Comparto una serie de
I share a series of
reflexiones que vienen de los discursos,
reflections that come from the speeches. In fact, let me do this. Let me just translate in real time, or not translate, but read the translation in real time and just turn him down a little bit. I share a series of reflections that come from the speeches, reflections from three cardinals, all three from Chicago: Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, who is Archbishop of Chicago in the 1990s, Cardinal Blaise Cupich, who is currently the Archbishop, and yours truly, as you know, was born in Chicago. So he's referring again here to himself, Bernardin and Cupich. And what he's about to do is he's about to give you the seamless garment view of Bernardin, and he's going to promote and call for it. Now, let's pause here before we proceed any further for people who don't know who Bernardin is, or Cupich, or the seamless garment view. This is a very touchy matter. Okay. For some, Bernardin, who's no longer alive, he was cardinal in over Chicago. For some, they loved him. They loved him, and they say that the accusations made against him aren't true. Others, especially traditionalists, hate Bernardin. And there were some very serious accusations made against him, namely that he was very much promoting homosexuality within the Catholic Church, that he opened the floodgates to homosexual seminarians. And most disturbingly, the biggest accusation made against him, whether there's merit to it or not, is highly debated, were the allegations that came from Malachi Martin in Windswept House. There's a whole lot of controversy on Malachi Martin himself, not only personally, but whether or not he was a reliable source of information. Be that as it may, he wrote about a situation where a bishop in the United States, and he was talking about Cardinal Bernardin. He alleged that Bernardin held a satanic mass in the United States simultaneous with a satanic mass in the Vatican. So there were two satanic masses going on at the same time, and they were connected via phone, and they carried them out simultaneously as a way to kind of consecrate the Vatican and the United States to Satan. And in this satanic black mass, a woman was raped. That woman is still alive today, the alleged woman. She has come out and said that this is all true and made those accusations. There's debate on whether or not she's a reliable source of information. Is she making it up? Or there's huge debates on all of this, okay? So I'm just telling you, be aware. There's people who say, yes, this happened. Others who say, I don't know. But the lady who was allegedly raped at the time, I know Church Militant reported on it, had an interview with her. You can maybe go and look into that. I know a lot of people have talked about, I know Taylor Marshall and others have talked about the situation with Cupich and this satanic mass and all that. And you can kind of see where they're coming from and what their concerns are in some of those videos, but it's based on Malachi Martin's claim in Windswept House, and some say Malachi Martin was very well placed, so he knew about it. Others question his credibility. Okay, but just be aware, Cardinal Bernardin is like a really touchy subject for a lot of people. So again, some people love him. He was very progressive in his views, and they just swear by him, and they say all this other stuff is false accusations made against him. Others have very serious concerns about these allegations. Okay, be aware. So when he mentions Cardinal Bernardin and he's about to promote his seamless garment view, This is going to be a touchy subject because currently the online Catholic voices who kind of flipped, they went from criticizing Pope Francis to loving Pope Leo XIV. They're the ones who were promoting this view about Bernardin, saying that he held the satanic mass. So this has got to be, they're going to experience some cognitive dissonance watching this. They're going to say, wait, the guy, this, now I love 2 years before was promoting Bernardin. So there's going to be cognitive dissonance for them. Whether they will tell you about that, whether they will talk about it publicly is a different question. I doubt they will. They probably will sweep this under the rug, pun intended, with the windswept house. They'll sweep this one under the rug, pretend this didn't happen. We're not going to tell people about it. I'm going to show this to y'all because you need to be aware. Okay. So what is the seamless garment view he's about to tell you about and endorse from Cardinal Bernardin? There's different perspectives on it. Maybe let me kind of give you a most favorable understanding of it and then more of a critical understanding of it that you'll see from different people. Seamless garment view is this. You know how there are some in the Catholic Church who speak mostly about the horrors of abortion. And they say, like, this is the worst thing that's going on in the United States. And we need to talk about this more than anything else, more than poverty, more than immigration, more than death penalty. We need to address the issue of abortion. So this group will say, yes, we need to talk about immigration, poverty, death penalty. These are things that we need to address. But front and center needs to be the sin of abortion. Okay, because the idea here is this is a worse sin than anything else going on in the United States. Okay, so you know how that is the view of some in the Catholic Church. Well, there's others in the Catholic Church who are critical of that view, and they want to say, wait, no. They want to say abortion. Okay, yeah, maybe it's wrong, but you need to be talking also just as much about the sin of, poverty and inequality and immigration issues and death penalty. You need to speak about these things and condemn some of the issues surrounding them just as much as you do abortion. This is what's called seamless garment theory. It comes from the Gospels that refers to the seamless garment of Jesus, and it points to the idea of something being united. Instead of just focusing on the issue of abortion, you need to be united and whole in your approach and talk about the evils of immigration and the horrible things that happen to immigrants and how the system is exploiting immigrants and not giving them a chance, or the system is creating or keeping people poor, and is the horrors of capitalism and stuff like that. That's where that perspective is coming from, right? Or the horrors of the death penalty, and you need to speak about that and be as vocal against that as you are abortion. That's the seamless garment view. You're about to see Pope Leo 2 years before he is made Pope endorse that view. That's going to be, for some people, they're going to love that. They're going to be like, absolutely, especially if they're more progressive leaning, they're going to love that he is promoting the seamless garment view. For others, especially more for your traditionalists, this will be horrifying, and they will be speechless right now if they see it. In reality, most of those people will probably never see this video, because what happens is the circles that they're around are very selective in the material that they provide and share, and they kind of all look to each other. They don't really look beyond that bubble. So unless something comes on their radar within that bubble, they're not going to see it. That's not what I want to do with y'all. I want to be balanced. I want to be fair. I want to show y'all the whole thing. Okay, so let's continue with what he says. Moment said Chicago, Chicaleo. What differences does it make? A single letter. 40 years ago, in December, Cardinal Joseph Bernardin, Archbishop of Chicago, delivered a speech that is truly historic within the church, at least in the United States. He directed it at Fordham University in New York, a speech that set a very important direction for his ministry, offering a new way of thinking about how the church could respond to the ethical challenges and problems that arose at that time, as well as today. They have to do all, or they have to do above all with the questions about the value of human life. Last week, Cardinal Blaise Cupich delivered a speech that developed some of the same ideas at Fordham University. Let's pause there. Cupich, he is the Archbishop of Chicago, a cardinal. He is the one who has been over advising Pope Francis on who will be made a bishop in the United States. Prevost was also over advising Pope Francis at the Vatican. So he and Cupich worked in conjunction with one another in determining who would be a bishop and who would be removed. So Prevost and Cupich were partly influential in some of the more recent appointments in the episcopate in the United States, and also in the removal of some bishops like Bishop Strickland. That was Prevost, the future Leo XIV, and Cupich, who were, among others, responsible for having Bishop Strickland removed. Whether he was justly removed or not, different question that I've explored many times on this channel already. But I'm just telling you the roles that these guys played. So here he's quoting Cupich, the successor, if you will, or a successor, to Bernardin. And Cupich is promoting the seamless garment view, and you're about to hear the future Leo XIV just 2 years ago promote it and endorse it himself and call for it. Cupich, very controversial figure. Again, the progressives love him. The traditionalists hate him. He has, it seems, been somewhat critical of, for instance, the Latin Mass, and has shut down some of the Latin Masses in Chicago. So if you're kind of a traditionalist, you're not going to like Cupich. If you're more of a progressive, you're probably going to like Cupich. Right now, he's endorsing the view of Cupich on the seamless garment theory. So again, this is going to trigger some people. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and continue with you, and let's proceed. In New York, commemorating the 40th anniversary of Cardinal Bernardin's first speech, Cardinal Bernardin, concerned about how abortion and other social justice issues had even divided some sectors of the church, presented an important response that had its origins within church doctrine, and from this teaching looked outward, looking at society within a framework that he called a coherent ethic of life. Cardinal Bernardin continued to develop this idea until his death in 1996. This vision of Cardinal Bernardin, with which he proposed understanding the moral teaching of the church, sought to respond to the many challenges affecting human life as if they were part of a single garment. There you go. There's the seamless garment theory. He's saying that you can't just focus on the question of abortion as if that's the worst thing. You gotta speak about all these sins in society equally, kind of thing. It charts a path for the church that can serve us today as well. For example, a Catholic cannot declare that he is pro-life just because he holds an anti-abortion stance, but then say that he is in favor of the death penalty. That's going to be a punch in the face to a lot of Catholics right there. Because what Prevost 2 years before being made Pope just told a whole bunch of people is, if you're in favor of the death penalty, but you're against abortion, you're not pro-life. You can't call yourself pro-life. That's going to be a punch in the face to a lot of people. A lot, especially on your more kind of traditionalist end of the spectrum. And that's going to be something that people on the progressive end of the spectrum are just going to love. They're going to be like, yeah, that's what we've been saying all along. So he's saying if you're against the death penalty, but for the death penalty, but against abortion, you can't call yourself pro-life. Now, a lot of people have been critical of that view. And they say, but wait, there is a difference, because with the case of abortion, that's an innocent person's life being taken. In the case of the death penalty, the person is no longer innocent. You cannot compare them as if they are the same. Others say, but no, it is the same, because either way, guilty or not, this is against the infinite dignity of the human person. And that's where Pope Francis comes with infinitas dignita, or dignitas infinita document, infinite dignity, that he just came out with a few years ago. That is where you can find a whole bunch of documents from Pope Francis against the death penalty. He's rooting it in the dignity of the human person. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here. And again, this will be a splash of cold water in the face of those who are loving Pope Leo right now, but are pro death penalty, and critical of Pope Francis on the death penalty. This is going to be a punch in the gut, because they're going to be like, wait, what are you talking about? You're saying I'm not pro-life? You know, I've been at pro-life rallies. I've been here. I've done this and that. I've done all this. And you're telling me I'm not pro-life? They're going to feel a slap in the face for this, right? So there's going to be different views, different perceptions. People are going to look at this differently. Do be aware of that, however. Let's go ahead and proceed. Share my screen again, and let's continue. This would not be consistent with the social doctrine of the church. So he's saying, if you're against the death penalty, you're not consistent with the social doctrine of the church. And then we can say that our way of thinking and teaching must show coherence that defends the value of human life from beginning to end. As a community of believers and as a society, we often find ourselves deeply troubled by divisions, perplexed, and sometimes confused by a host of new questions about life, about the relationship of the church to society at large, and even about the very identity of the individual and his or her relationship to himself or herself. There is division among Christians. There are people, for example, in the church who harshly criticize the Pope or some bishops or some situations, people who reject his teaching, who seek to divide. Just looking at the blogs and interviews in recent months, before, during, and at the conclusion of the month-long Synod on Synodality, there have been false reports, distortions, even theories, conspiracies, and misinterpretations about so many beautiful experiences we had during the Synod. In a certain sense, I propose that today we need Cardinal Bernardin's proposal again. There it is, full stop, right? So if you were unclear of whether he's promoting seamless garment theory of Bernardin, yes, he is, very explicitly. He's saying that seamless garment theory of Cardinal Bernardin that says we have to focus on the question of the horrors of capitalism, immigration, death penalty, X, Y, and Z. You have to focus on that just as much as abortion. Because the idea is that they're all issues that impact life. And so if you're pro-life, you got to be equally pro-life on all of these things. Okay. Cardinal Bernardin's proposal again, and perhaps now more than ever along these lines, now Cardinal Cupich has proposed recovering and then developing these ideas of a coherent ethic of life, moving toward a new comprehensive ethic of solidarity. With this proposal, the church could offer a great gift to the people of God, and indeed to all people who seek the common good, because if the church takes Pope Francis's call to embody a synodal church seriously, then we must instill an integral ethic of solidarity in every dimension of our lives. The coherent ethic of life arose from a perception that a series of moral questions were being raised across the spectrum of life, from conception to the grave, in part by the emergence of new technologies that today also pose serious questions for the church, the family, and all people throughout society. In the words of Cardinal Bernardin, the spectrum of life through the themes of genetics, abortion, capital punishment, modern warfare, and the care of the terminally ill. Cardinal Bernardin rooted these diverse issues in a single principle of the Catholic faith, that the loss of a single human life is a momentous event. Seen in this context, abortion, war, poverty, euthanasia, and capital punishment share a common identity in that they are all based on the denial of the right to life. We could add other issues such as the effects of artificial intelligence, human trafficking, immigrant rights, among many others.
Nuestra respuesta a todos
Our
estos
response to
retos
all
requiere
these
coherencia,
challenges requires coherence based on respect for the dignity of human life and authentic reverence for the image of and likeness of God in every human being. If one holds, as we do, that every ugly person's right to be born, I don't know why it says ugly person. I guess that's like some kind of formal equivalency for whatever the Spanish word is there. I suspect that Google or YouTube got that wrong, but that's what it said. Every ugly person born must be protected by civil law, backed by civil consensus. Then our moral, political, and economic responsibilities cannot stop at the moment of birth. We must find the necessary means to ensure that every child born receives the necessary care and that their right to life, health, and education are protected. Those who defend the right to life of the weakest among us must be equally visible in support of the quality of life of the weakest among us. And so this is going to say, if you're out there speaking of the horrors of abortion, you got to speak of the horrors of exploitation of immigrants equally. So including the elderly and children, the hungry, the homeless, and undocumented immigrants. I think that one's going to trigger a lot of people. Let me just sip my coffee. Y'all remember the Kermit the Frog theme? Just sipping his tea. That's me right now. Undocumented immigrants. That's going to set a lot of people off here in the United States. Others are going to love it. Some are saying this man sounds balanced. So yeah, there's different views, different perspectives. You know, some people are going to see this as great. Some people will see this as balanced. Others will see this as unbalanced. Others will see this as horrible. You know, there's different views in the Catholic Church, and based on like different views, and also based on what model of interpretation you're using, will kind of determine how you perceive this. Okay. All right. So he says, an undocumented immigrants. At the same time, Cardinal Bernardin emphasized the distinction between each of the problems. Any effort to conflate them without understanding their relative moral importance would depart from Catholic teaching. In other words, the Cardinal was not claiming that all of life's problems were equal. And so here he's steel manning the seamless garment view. So the common critique of the seamless garment is, well, you're just emphasizing all of these other issues as if they're just directly equal to the sin of abortion. But the steel man view is to say, well, no, not necessarily. There are distinctions and differences in the sin itself, but we need to be equally vocal about these other sins as we are the sin of abortion. So he's now steel manning the seamless garment view. Rather, he placed great emphasis on the distinctive character of each challenge or dilemma, each of which requires its own criteria for analysis, while at the same time emphasizing the reality of the interrelationship of all threats to the dignity of human life. One of the great challenges we face today, particularly at this Catholic university and at Catholic universities, is to find the best way to teach and promote precisely a way of thinking that seeks to unite efforts in the church, in politics, and in all sectors of society to work in harmony, to build a society where the value of every human life is respected and where protected. At the Catholic University, we have an enormous responsibility to deepen this reflection and in the spirit of synodality to accompany this great task of illuminating and proposing valid solutions to the many challenges we must address. Once again, I thank and congratulate everyone for their work at university, especially on this occasion, this celebration of the 25th anniversary of the founding of the university. And so there it is. And so what I just did with you is what most won't do, and that is show you the entire thing, show you the context. what some people will do is ignore that this ever happened. Others will maybe show you just one snippet and then offer commentary on that and ignore everything else that was just said. I just showed to you the whole thing so that you can fact check me in real time and see the whole thing, and you can see whether I'm being fair with the source or not. What some people will do, as we've already seen a few in the chat, here's how some will react if they're even aware of this. Again, I predict the vast majority of those who are critical of Pope Francis will not show this to their audience. So they probably just won't talk about it. They'll either not be aware, or if they're aware, they just sweep it under the rug. Okay. I predict that will likely be the case. However, for the few who will comment on it, they likely won't show you the whole thing. They'll likely show you only a snippet. And then for the very few after that who would show you the whole thing, what they'll attempt to argue is, well, this was 2 years ago. He wasn't Pope Leo XIV, so you can't say this is Pope Leo XIV. This was Cardinal Prevost. And they'll use that kind of schizophrenic paradigm and say that Cardinal Prevost is not the same as Leo XIV. He profoundly changed due to the graces of the papacy, and they'll try to argue that, even though everything that we've seen from Pope Leo XIV so far is consistent with everything that he said before. Nothing has substantially changed. I'm not, I as you can see, I'm not buying the split personality or the two Leos, the Prevost versus Leo. I'm not buying that thesis, and I think time will bear me out on that point. I think the evidence already bears it out, but right, if even if it's too early to tell for some people, give it a year or two, and you'll see what I'm saying here is true, that Pope Leo XIV has not changed from Cardinal Prevost. They're the same person, same views, and so I think that what you're going to get in this pontificate is an implementation of these views. Okay, so some people are going to love that. Some people are going to absolutely love that. They're going to be on fire. Other people are going to absolutely hate this. Their hair will be on fire. Some people will kind of be in the middle, right? But, regardless of what perspective you're coming from, this will at the very least give you a balanced view of what's going on. And it also shows you that what I've been telling y'all all along, that the Pope, whoever is elected, will be consistent with Pope Francis, whether you like that or not, different question. He will be Pope Francis, another Pope Francis. Obviously, there will be differences in personality and some differences here and there, but on the whole, he will carry out the legacy and thought and vision of Pope Francis. Everything that we've seen so far from Leo XIV, before Pope and after Pope, bears that out. And I'm also going to prove that to you in the next show, where I am going to go over this address that most people are not telling you about. And that is address of the Pope to representatives of other churches and ecclesial communities and other religions yesterday on ecumenism and, again, other religions. So Jews and Muslims, he has some things in there. Again, some people, their hair will be on fire. Others, their hearts will be on fire. Some just be somewhere in between. But what it is it's more of the same. So if you love the interreligious dialogue that you saw with Pope Francis, you'll love this. If you hated that, you're going to be concerned about this. Okay. As I've been telling you all along, why am I belaboring this? To toot my own horn? To say, told you so? No. But to, once again, I have to defend myself against the numerous people who slandered me and falsely accused me and strawmanned me and destroyed, in many cases, my reputation online. They turned me into somebody I'm not. They told you things about me that I never said are not true, and they painted me into something that just isn't me. And they destroyed my reputation in so many circles. You just even mention my name, people will shut down immediately and won't hear anything else that you have to say if you even mention my name. And why? Because they have a straw man view of me, and they think that I hold to this or that view, and it's just not the case. They haven't actually listened to anything I say. But the thing is, that narrative about me, that straw man presentation about me that you'll see from so many on the online personalities, from the cardinals who called to cancel my livelihood, from the bishops and YouTubers who called to cancel my livelihood, from those people who slandered me and misrepresented me for years, I have to point out to y'all the truth. I have to point out to you, I've been consistent. I've had to point out to y'all, I've been vindicated here. And I have to point out to you, what I've been saying is coming true. What I predicted is coming true. Why? Because so many people destroyed my reputation. So nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to come and say Michael was right. Nobody else is going to say, you know what, we didn't give him a fair shake. Nobody else is going to do it. So I have to do that here myself. So I'm not doing that to toot my own horn. I'm not doing it to say I told you so. I'm doing it to address the numerous people who called to cancel my livelihood, from cardinals on down, who misrepresented me and came against me and tried to shut me down to where I couldn't even make a living and provide for my family. I have to do this for that reason, to show you I've been reliable and I've been vindicated. Hopefully that will help restore some confidence of people who saw nothing but the straw man, saw nothing but the lie. Maybe they'll see this and say, I guess I need to give him a fair shake. I guess I need to take a second look here. I guess maybe he was misrepresented. But again, there's bigger issues than just me in that situation going on. This and what I just showed you will impact everything in the future. Here's why. I saw somebody the other day say, well, why does it even matter what happened under Pope Francis? Okay, here's why it matters. The conditions that led to all of the divisions under the previous pontificate, those conditions are still present. They haven't changed. Any unity that you see online between Catholics right now is surface level. It's a facade. It's a veneer. Give it time. And unfortunately, those same conditions that were present that led people to turn on the previous pope and then to fight against each other nonstop, the same conditions are present here. What happens when people realize that? Right now, they don't realize it because they're not paying attention. They're not looking and seeing, or they're being told what to say, or they're just looking to other people because they're not independent thinkers. And so if this guy said it, I'm going to repeat it. And they're not aware of what all is going on and what all the Pope is saying. What happens when they finally get the memo? Again, the same conditions that led to the contention and divisions and factions under the previous pontificate are present here. So when people finally figure that out, what are you going to have? You're going to have more fighting and more disunity. Now, that might change with Leo to where he's able to bring that under control. Maybe what he'll be able to do is shut that down. So whenever it starts to happen, maybe he will be able to dispel some of these perspectives or misinformation, correct misinformation or fake news or slander. Maybe he'll be able to help facilitate better dialogue. Maybe you'll have that. But the underlying conditions are still there. Do not be fooled. And don't be fooled by the YouTubers who are deleting their videos so that you don't know that this stuff is going on. Realize this is still a ticking time bomb, but it could be that Leo is the man to be able to bring about unity whenever people get the memo and start doing what they did in the previous pontificate. Whenever they start spreading their fake news, creating a lot of division and confusion, maybe he'll be able to address that problem better than Pope Francis did. There were a lot of things that I was critical about Pope Francis about in that area. I just thought, man, he really could have done better in handling the confusion, the misinformation, the fake news. It would just take 5 minutes for him to get on video. Like, it wouldn't take long, and just say, hey guys, by the way, I didn't say that. Or hey guys, by the way, here's what I meant. Or hey guys, just so you know. It wasn't hard to do. I want to take some questions, Q&A. Put your questions, critical, favorable, I don't care. I want to hear your questions. Put them right now in the chat at Reason and Theology. I'm going to grab some of those for a few minutes. And again, we got another show here at 3 p.m. Central in 3 hours where we are going to talk about what Pope Leo just said about Jews and Muslims. I'm going to give y'all just a few minutes to put that in the chat. I'm going to step away, grab me some coffee. Make sure to put it to at Reason and Theology. And I'll take your questions here in just a moment. All right, seeing all sorts of questions already. Darren says, did Pope Francis say all religions are paths to God? He did say that. He said that. John Paul II said something similar. Benedict said something similar when he was Ratzinger. So you'd have Francis who would say that. Then he would say Jesus is the way, truth, and life, the only path to heaven. But then he would also say all religions lead to God. So Benedict did the same thing. JP2 did the same thing. Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, does the same thing. I did a video last week where I try to show y'all, here's how. Pope Francis, here's how. Benedict, here's how. John Paul II, here's how. Vatican II attempts to harmonize those things. The video was called Outside the Church, There Is No Salvation, a Comprehensive Explanation. So there, outside the church, there is no salvation, a comprehensive explanation. You will want to go and watch that. I promise you it's worth the time. You may not like the answer. You may love the answer. But either way, you will have your answer as to why Pope Francis said things like that, Benedict, John Paul II, Vatican II. You'll have your answer. So go and watch that for a more detailed explanation. What else we got in the chat? Okay, Stefan says, are the misinformation campaigns pretty much in the United States and Germany or in more places? All over. A huge center for it was from the United States, and that's especially what Prevost, 2 years later now, Leo XIV, was talking about. That's who he was talking about. He was talking about the bishops in the United States, especially the YouTubers, the Twitter warriors. He's talking about the bloggers, those people. So your theologians, your laity, those people who were saying Pope Francis teaches heresy or is teaching error or disseminating fake news about the Synod. He's talking about those people. And it's especially the United States, but it happens all over the world. It's not just United States. What else? Daniel, I'm sorry you had to go through that kind of persecution. I've always appreciated your work. Thanks, I appreciate it. And I don't mention that for anyone to feel sorry. That's not it. The point is, those people called to cancel my livelihood, which is how I take care of my children. They called to cancel that from Cardinal Zen on down. All of them, just like a huge, Twitter storm, all came together calling for it, among others. By strawmanning me, misrepresenting my position, and then again calling to cancel my livelihood. They were not successful thanks to y'all who have supported me on the channel. And I have to shout out all of you supporters and patrons. Thank y'all. You're why I was able to continue to provide for my family. Thank you. But I have to point it out because nobody else will. Nobody else is going to speak up for me, and I don't expect them to. That's fine. I don't expect anybody else to speak up for me, whether they're clergy or laity. Nobody owes me anything. They don't owe me. So I don't expect them to. But because I know that, right, I have to say something about myself whenever it impacts my livelihood. And since this clearly vindicates what I've been saying and clearly shows you I have been a reliable source of information despite all of the caricatures, lies, and slander, this shows you what I've been saying. It shows you I've been reliable against the cacophony of the industry of papal slanderers who are out there telling you all sorts of other things. That being said, again, is there room, as I've said numerous times, for criticism of the Pope? Yeah, of course. I criticize Pope probably every day. But there's, as I've done many videos about explaining, there's a difference between constructive criticism and destructive criticism and slander and dissent. I've explained the differences between assent, withholding assent, and dissent. I've explained the difference between public and private criticism, constructive and destructive criticism. I have videos all about that. And I've made the necessary distinctions and I've been consistent about it. So yeah, there's room for some disagreement here and there. There's room for criticism. Of course, I've never opposed that. I've never been against that. I saw somebody mischaracterize me just the other day, one of these YouTubers, Catholic YouTubers, put my face up on the screen while he's saying, there's some division. He was saying Leo's a unifier, and under the previous Pope, there were some who hated the Pope and some who loved the Pope and some who attacked each other because they didn't love the Pope enough, and they put my face on the screen. That was wrong. That was messed up, because that's just slanderous. That would be like me taking that YouTuber, putting their face up on the screen and just saying, yeah, some of these Catholics, there's Catholics out there who promote pride, the pride masses, and putting their face on the screen. That's deceitful. It's disingenuous. That's never been my position. Never. I've never held, first of all, I don't attack people. It's usually the other way around. I'm usually the one being attacked. What I'll tend to do is I'll point out fake news and refute the fake news. If you perceive that as an attack, that's on you. But what I'll do is, and the irony is they get to attack the Pope all day long, but as soon as you refute them, you're the guy who's attacking. I didn't attack people, let alone for the notion that they didn't love the Pope enough. Look, I don't want to speak poorly of the dead, right? So all I'll just say is, as y'all know, I wasn't a huge fan of Pope Francis in that pontificate. I think he was a good person. I think he was a good man. I wasn't a huge fan of his pontificate, his style, his leadership. I was not a big fan. But just because I'm not a big fan doesn't give you a pass to lie about him, doesn't give you a pass to slander him or the church, doesn't give you a pass to engage in fake news, doesn't give you a pass to disseminate false information and dissent and stuff. It doesn't give you a pass for any of that. And if people perceive me dispelling or correcting fake news as, oh, this guy is the best thing ever, well, that's your problem. You're the issue. Your faulty methodology of interpretation is the problem. You're the issue, not me. And that happened with a lot of people. Okay. John says, I used to be pro-death penalty, but Pope Francis helped me change my view. I'm glad to see Pope Leo agrees. We already knew that, right? We already saw that Pope Leo, when he was still bishop, was saying the death penalty is inadmissible and affirming what Pope Francis was saying. So we already knew that. And I did see a guy who says that Pope Leo isn't the Pope, and he argues that Pope Leo isn't the Pope because Pope Leo affirmed Pope Francis's position on the death penalty, and they argue that Pope Francis's position was heresy, and then they argue a heretic can't be made Pope, ergo Leo isn't Pope. I will review that soon in just a moment, probably just actually within a few days. So, okay. What's my mission? To present truth to people and to give them a balanced perspective on what's going on. Okay. What else should we have? Okay, here's a question. It seems to me that people, especially the media, would truncate what Pope Francis said in order to sensationalize and discredit him. Do you think this will continue under Pope Leo? Yeah, I've answered this one. I'll repeat it again just because I don't think it's changed really at this point. I haven't seen anything that would change. Okay. Yes and no. Yes and no. All right, hear me out. Let me explain. Some of the confusion from the previous pontificate in the media was due to Pope Francis not being clear. It was due to his style. It was due to ambiguities on his part. That was some of it, but that was maybe a quarter of it. The majority, the 75% of the confusion surrounding the previous pontificate was not from him. It was from the critics, secular and Catholic, as I pointed out and documented in thousands of videos at this point. And I mean literally thousands of videos. I documented that thoroughly for y'all, and I was one of the few doing it. And I still stand by everything that I pointed out there. Now, do I think that will continue? Well, I do think that Pope Leo, as a mathematician and canon lawyer, will be more precise and already clearly is more articulate in the way he speaks about matters, whether written or off-the-cuff statements, I suspect. So I think that maybe 25% of the confusion that was due to Pope Francis, you could probably reduce that down to, slim or none, right? But what about the rest of that other stuff? Well, a lot of that 75% was based on false narratives. It was based on the way people interpret people. It was based on them buying into what other content creators or what the news is saying, and then they're just perpetuating it. So far, that situation hasn't erupted yet within the church. Not yet. But what I was telling y'all is the underlying conditions that led to that under Pope Francis have not been eliminated. They're still present. Maybe it's slightly reduced because you have a more articulate Pope, but that would account for only some of it, not for the rest. The defect is not always in the Pope. The defect is in the interpreter, in their methodology of interpretation, and or their lack of catechesis. Those underlying conditions are still largely present today. So what you will have is eventually you will have that erupting and coming out and becoming more in your face in this pontificate. That will happen. Hopefully, Pope Leo will be able to handle that better, because just because it happens doesn't mean it has to stay that way. When it happens, hopefully he will be a strong and effective leader who can start to address that problem and quiet those folks down and change their mind and help them along better than the previous pontificate did. Okay, so it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to. An effective leader can fix that problem. You can't always eliminate all fake news, sure, but you can do a lot to reduce that kind of stuff. You can, at least as Pope. Maybe I can't as just a regular personality on YouTube. I can only do so much. Maybe I can't do a whole lot to offset the fake news, but a Pope, 1.4 billion followers, world leader, has the ear of everyone in the world. Oh yeah, he can do a whole lot. He can do a lot to address the question and the problem of fake news. So it doesn't have to be that way. Whenever it happens, he could address the situation. Whether he will, that I don't know. It's a great question. I think canon law does have parameters of how one can respectfully criticize a Pope. Yes, I've done multiple shows on the code of canon law in respect to the relevant canons here, whether it's canon 212 or was it 1364, somewhere around there. Pope Francis, in was it book 5 or book 6, added some additional canons on the question about criticism of the papacy and the bishop and how you can be censured for it, and there will be canonical penalties. I don't know how serious the papacy will be in actually implementing it, but yeah, that was added, and we did shows on that. Yeah. What else? Wise Lion says, what you do is honorable. You did a great job defending Pope Francis against unfair criticisms. But here's the problem. We couldn't get to the fair criticisms of Pope Francis because we're so busy dealing with the unfair criticisms. What they did is a disservice to everybody, because constructive feedback that could have been offered to the Pope and may have changed some things couldn't even get to it. You can't even get into a conversation of constructive criticism while you're having to address nonstop fake news and lies. If they had not engaged in all that, there would have been more room and time to discuss some constructive criticism, and maybe that message could have got back to the Pope and he could have made some changes. I got here late. Did the Pope say something about YouTubers? More than that, more than the YouTuber critics, the Twitter critics, the bishop critics, everyone. He called them all out. He called the bloggers out. He's talking about everyone on social media in general. So that's going to be YouTube, blogs. That's going to be Twitter, Facebook. That's going to be all of those outlets, right? He was calling out those who criticized the Pope and accused them of error. And he called out the bishops who did that too. Christine says, always appreciated your work, Michael. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. Michael, your explanation of Nostra Aetate was helpful for me on other religions. Thanks. Thank you. I'm glad that the show I just did on that a few days ago was helpful. Viola says Michael studies the magisterium and presents a point of view that is a hermeneutic of continuity with the Vatican. Why would anyone be interested in what the magisterium is saying? Pretty important. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of my area is the study of the magisterial studies, and then the question of hermeneutics is very relevant to that, right? If you have a hermeneutic of suspicion of rupture, your evaluation of the data will come to a certain conclusion. If you have a hermeneutic of continuity and harmonization, your evaluation of the same data will come to different conclusions. So yeah, I've spoken a lot about that. And of course, Benedict argued you need to have a hermeneutic of continuity. It seems the Bible argues that as well. I think just interpersonal relations with people, you want people to give you the judgment of charity and a hermeneutic of continuity. You want that yourself, so you should give that to others. The problem is the same people that criticized me with straw man argumentation, they were doing so because of their methodology, a hermeneutic of suspicion, a hermeneutic of rupture, and that's why they came up with straw man versions of me. That same problem is why they also strawman Pope Francis. It's a methodology. It's something they do. I guarantee you, those critics, I guarantee you, the critics who strawmanned me, strawman the Pope, I guarantee if you looked into their personal life, they do it to their spouse, they do it to their family, their friends, they do it to everyone around them. Because it's a way of interpreting information. It's not just something that you do to a Pope or a YouTuber. It's the way you interpret communication. If you're looking for rupture, if you're using a suspicious attitude, it's going to come out in your conversations with your spouse, with your children, with your family, with your friends, with your employer. It will come out. You'll always, you'll see your employer as, well, my employer told me this, but then they told me that. Look how they constantly contradict themselves. And maybe they do. Maybe they do, right? There's only so much that a hermeneutic of continuity and the judgment of charity can do. Sometimes people do just contradict themselves. But if you're using a hermeneutic of continuity, you're going to be less likely to conclude that, and you'll usually give people that people aren't just outright contradicting themselves. There's some kind of distinction and nuance going, right? Okay. Brandon Lofton, since the new Pope, some will love this, some will hate this. Yeah, right. Because I'm trying to take into account everybody and how different people see different things and how they'll interpret this. And yeah, I'm trying to show you from different angles, the different factions in the church, trying to help you better understand. I think that's important because I think that will actually help introduce healthier conversations within and even outside of the church. The more you understand people and why they believe what they believe, the better you can have a more productive conversation with them. Okay, thank you for presenting a balanced view on the papacy. We need voices like you presenting a reasoned and accurate view of the papacy. Thank you. So I tried to do with this show and will continue to do. Any other questions? See a lot of comments, but I was looking for questions specifically. I think I grabbed everything. So what we'll do is we will meet back right here on the channel in 3 hours to talk about the audience that Pope Leo just gave on ecumenism and other religions. That one is a big one as well. I can't believe this one has already slipped under the radar. It's been a whole day and nobody's talking about it. Usually they're on it like that. If it's something that they want to tell you about, they'll tell you about it within 2 minutes of it being published, right? But some of this other stuff, it just continues to slip under the radar because I think it just kind of goes against the narrative. And so I have to bring that to y'all so that you have a balanced take, so that you hear the narrative, but you also hear the other side, and it gives you a balanced perspective. Saul says, what a cliffhanger. Well, you know, I got to leave you wanting to come back, right? So we're going to do another show here in 3 hours. I already have a stream link up. Go and hit the bell for notifications so you know when I go live, which will probably be at 3 on the dot, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that would be 1 p.m. California time, Pacific time. So stay tuned for that. Hey, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't subscribed, but you've benefiting from the content of this channel, do your part. Hit the sub button, hit the like button, and do consider supporting me on Patreon. I've told y'all in this stream, there are a lot of people who attempted to cancel you, right? Cancel my livelihood. A way to offset that is support me on Patreon, patreon.com/reason of theology. There's also PayPal links, donation links, GoFundMe links in the show notes, as well as you could just hit the join button right here on YouTube, right next to the subscribe button. And when you do that, you get access to extra content, exclusive patron-only content, and you'll also enable me to continue to provide content like this for free every day. So, all right, see you on just a little bit for another show.